Growing your portfolio in commercial is way easier than residential property. Now, we've learnt in the market and through years and through how my parents have invested and maybe your grandparents, how they invested, that the way you do it in residential is that you buy your first home and you scrape and pinch, you buy your first home, you then go and support it by putting money into it to support the mortgage. You've got a tenant in there, or you might buy a vacant, make some renovations and then try to create a bit of uplift, and then you try to pull that money out and then go again, right? And that process in a faster economy with low interest rates, where you're getting your tenants paying a lot more rent, or that the difference between an unrenovated property with a renovated property is much more higher, then you can probably do it in 12 or 18 months, right? You get that gain and you go again. That is the expected timeline. However, in a slowing market like we are in now, where we're seeing almost 7% interest rates, we're seeing people dumbing down the prices of residential, we're seeing that the offers are not what you expected in terms of the growth, we're seeing that the renovated, unrenovated properties not making a huge difference, we're seeing rebuilds haven't come up. All of these things really stop your growth. And what the reality of that is that you are actually at the mercy of the market. Now, I'm going to say that again. You're at the mercy of the market. That means if the market goes up, you go up, right? So a rising tide rises all ships, right? That's what they say, right? So if the market is stagnant at the moment or trying to be pulled down by the government, that's what happens to your residential property. It's market driven. So you can try to work really, really hard, but what actually happens is you're getting nowhere and your increases are this little rather than this much, right? So this is where you start to hit a wall and you're not moving faster in your residential investment journey, but you really know and want to do this. So you actually can grow your commercial property portfolio faster than your residential. Why do I say that? I say that because it's actually proved and evident that in the history of commercial property investment, that most of the entrepreneurs have made their money through growth of their property. Let me talk you through an example. When we look at the Harvey Normans of this world, the Dick Smith of this world, what they're telling us is they didn't make the money out of franchising. They made the money out of owning the properties that franchises were in, because of the value growth of not only the land, but of the actual property and then actually having their tenant in there. When we look at McDonald's, people tell you that yes, McDonald's is in the business of real estate. No, they're not in the business of real estate. They're in the business of commercial real estate, which is fundamentally different from residential. One of the big fundamental things is that the tenant pays all the outgoings. The tenant takes care of your property as if it's their own. The tenant increases the value of your property. Plus, on top of that, all the renovations, all the extensions, all the fit out, it actually rises and it actually brings up the value of your property, right? That's what makes it so different from residential property. And this is something that you need to know if you truly want to grow wealth, right? You need to be able to invest in commercial property, understand how to grow it. And that's what I'm going to share with you in this video, is that it's way easier to grow commercial property. Number one, it is cash flow, right? It's way easier to grow a commercial property portfolio than a residential. And the reason for that is you have the servicing and the cash flow from the commercial property already to help you grow your portfolio. So you don't need to scratch around and look for it as you do in residential, right? So one of the big things about growing the commercial property portfolio is being able to leverage against the first one. So the first property deal you do is so fundamental. And most people think, oh, just go regional because I'm chasing an 8% yield, right? This is where the first mistakes that you make. You go to regional, you buy an 8% yield, and you end up somewhere around further out from Mackay, you end up in Emerald, you end up in maybe Mount Isa, or you end up in a really a suburb that has got less than 20,000 population. Yeah, great, you've got the cash flow, but it doesn't grow for years and years, and there's nothing to value add. You might value add a little bit, but the thing is, the rising rents don't add up to it, right? So these are fundamentally opposing strategies. And why do I talk about opposing strategy? Is most people go, I want cash flow, I want growth, I want the value add so I can go again. No, what you want is find an area where the first property has a stable cash flow income, very little vacancies because there's mostly owner occupiers versus investors. It's in high demand in terms of location, type of tenants that want to go in there because it's surrounded by like tenants, the type of property, and it doesn't matter if it's warehouse, where office or retail, because there's areas still around Australia where retail is still really in demand in one area, where office is still really in demand. There's no vacancies in that building, right? And that's what you're looking for. You're looking for these. And then you're looking for that where you add the value is what else can you do with that property, or maybe you need to change that tenant. It doesn't matter going in that the tenant might be on a 2-year lease or a 18 months with a 2-year option, or they might be on 5-by-5-year leases. In fact, 5-by-5-year leases might stop your growth in the next 2 years for you to buy again, right? You might want to have a tenant that has got 18 months to go, right? They've got 18 months to go. They come to a renewal period then. And if you know your market and you know that is below market rent, and people give you all of these smoke and mirrors out there, all the buyer's agents out there give you smoke and mirrors, right? I mean, here at Unicorn, we tell you as it is, right? I'm a buyer's agent. We specialize in people who want to be in the market, but you want to be savvy, people who want to be informed, people who want to be strategic in the market, right? So if you're looking for someone who can align with you strategically, who can help you savvily navigate the market, who understands commercial property at its core because they've always done commercial property, never moved from residential to commercial because they're fundamentally different, and who trades across Australia, then Unicorn Commercial Property is what you should be, who you should be looking for. HelenTarrant.com, check us out. But on another note, what you're looking for is this actual property needs to be a unicorn in the complex or in the area. You don't need to look for a unicorn in the market. You need to look for the unicorn that's in the complex or in the suburb, right? And that's what makes it so important, is when you find that, it doesn't matter that your tenant's leaving in 18 months, right? If you can put the rent up by 20%, you're gaining a 20% value on the back end of your property, right? Which allows you to refinance and go again. Why is that so important? It's really important to be able to go again, especially when you're building a portfolio. And one of the big things is the cash flow in a commercial property will allow you naturally to service the deal. So let's say that you have bought a property and you've got 18 months to go, right? And it happens to be like $1 million or $2 million, doesn't matter the price point, but let's just work round numbers. $1 million, the tenant's paying $60,000 in net rent. So it's a 6% yielding property. And you're probably likely to get that property somewhere around maybe Gold Coast, Brisbane, Melbourne area, right? You'll get it in those areas, right? And when you get it in those areas, it's about a 6% yield. So the tenant pays all the outgoings, give or take a little bit of maintenance, right? Now, 18 months from now, if you could put the rent up from $60,000 to $65,000 or $66,000 even. So I'm not talking about even 20%, which is, $70,000 or $72,000. I'm talking about even just 10%. So $60,000 to $66,000, right? So we're looking at something that is really 10%, not a lot, right? $6,000 for a tenant, it roughly works out to be about $100 a week. So it's not a huge much money off their bottom line, right? So that comes in $66,000. Now you can go back to the bank and get that property revalued. What does that value add? So it now makes the property somewhere around 1.15 million. Now, why do I say that? It's because the bank is going to look around and say, hey, you know what? Everyone else is still buying at 6%, but your current rent is now $66,000, so I'm going to take that into account and probably some movements in the market and seeing that other people are trading a little bit lower. I'm going to value it at based on the previous transactions and how people are transacting at the moment. It's probably going to be valued 1.15 million. So even if it was valued at 1.1 million, right? All of a sudden, you've got $100,000 or $150,000 that you can pull out and refinance. And commercial property refinance, it's just the same as residential. In fact, I have a special video that's coming up that tells you about all the finances in commercial property. Now, in this space, when you have that additional $150,000, what are you going to do with it? You're going to use that. You're going to use that to buy your next property, right? Yeah, it might be small. You might be going, well, what can I afford for $150,000, right? In fact, you can afford a lot more than most people think for $150,000. Look, it doesn't matter even if you buy something small, right? You can buy something small to start with as your secondary property. So let's say you spent the money on buying $1 million property, and the next property with the refinance, you pulled out some of your own money, you've got $150,000, you're going to buy probably a $450,000 property, right? It's 1/3, 2/3, usually the general rule in terms of lending. Well, what can you get? You might get a small office space, a retail space, even a small warehouse somewhere around Australia. But at least the main thing is you've gone from 1 to 2, right? What happens next is that you could have both properties in the next 18 months, earn more money, right? Tweak the little things, refinance both of them. Now you have another deposit to go again, right? But even better, if you could use the $150,000, find a property that potentially, if you're not scared of vacancy or if you've got a professional team to support you, do an uplift where you could double that $150,000 to $300,000. If you did that, you'll be able to then get into another $800,000 or $900,000 property, right? So when you go from $1 million to a small one, or then do the uplift to a big one, you can go from 1 to 2 in that space of 2 years right now. And you can continue doing that no matter what the market is doing, because it's not in the yields or returns in the commercial property space. The investors are different in the commercial property market than they are in the residential market. They buy at 3%, 5% returns, 6% returns, no matter what the interest rate is doing, right? Traditional commercial property investors invest in commercial property because they're looking at the nuances and they're planning for the future. And so to them, whether they're getting a 3% today, 5% today, doesn't make a difference. What they're thinking is, what are they going to get in returns in the next 3, 5, 7, 10 years? That is both the growth, the value add, and the cash flow. So if this is of value to you, make sure you join my free Facebook community below. There's a link below. But do click subscribe and like, and I'll see you in the next video.